Okay guys, so here we go. As I promised, I am going to do a modified Batwing pattern that I have started to do. I think because I'm lazy and there's no way I'm going to do the color blocking and add things to the panels. I just started experimenting with this and this works great. So this is what I've been doing. Super simple. You guys are going to be surprised you didn't think about this yourself because it's just, you just work with what you got basically. So I'm starting out with 3 panels 6x9. You could just do 2. I do 3 because I'm going to do a pocket liner. This is actually a mask that I had originally done in a pleated version, and since I started doing the fitted version, I have slowly started taking apart the ones I did pleated and fixing them so that they're fitted because I like it so much better. So you got your 6x9 monster panel. There's lots of string because I just got done seam ripping this out, re-ironing it down so it's nice and flat. Okay, so here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna fold this in half, and we're gonna take the female version of the Batwing pattern. If you're making a kid's version, it fits perfectly. You don't have to do anything, just cut it. Adult, female. I'm going to lay it on and I'm going to clip it in place. I'm going to leave this top edge that has that little tiny bit right there. I'm just going to leave it. Doesn't matter. And I'm going to line it up with the bottom edge of the Batwing pattern. Okay? And I'm going to cut this baby out. If I'm doing one for men, I will cut just a little way away, maybe, I don't know, 1/4 inch away from the edge of the pattern, but for women, right up next to that pattern. Okay, just like so. There's our panel. Cut. All right, now set this aside. Take my 2 lining pieces, put them on top of each other, fold them in half, put my panel down, lining it up again at the bottom. Don't worry about the top. Snip that nose piece. I hope you guys can see what I'm doing because I don't do tutorials. I had to rearrange my room a little bit so that you wouldn't see my massive mess. And hopefully, between the kids, the dog, my husband, they leave us alone. Okay, so then on one of my panels, I'm just going to lay it down in half and I'm going to cut 1 inch short. This is what's going to make my pocket for filter. Some people really like having the filter. I really don't think it's necessary once it's 3 layers of cotton, and then it just gets too hot because I live in Florida. So I'm going to go and I'm going to iron this, and I'm just going to fold back about 1/4 inch and iron it down. Okay, so I've got my liner, 1/4 of an inch, fold it down. I have 2 of this nice elastic that I bought off Amazon. It's ropey, like a rope. It's super soft. It feels just like the surgical masks that we wear. They're elastic. I have loved this. So I go ahead, jump ahead here, and I pin this to my first panel, about 1 inch or so, maybe 3/4 of an inch. Through that elastic to hold it in place. I just eyeball it. 7 inches for women, 8 inches for men, 6.5 inches for kids. I have bought some of those ear sliders. If I put ear sliders on the kids, I make it 8 inches. And then I add the ear slide, plastic little ear slider thingies that I picked up off Amazon so that the kids can adjust it to them. Okay, so this is done. Now we're going to sew. I'm going to slide my machine up here. Okay. So I kind of do a little version of batch sewing. I usually don't do one mask at a time. I'm usually doing several, but for this we're going to do one. So fold these little pleats together along the bottom. If they don't match perfectly, it's okay. You guys, I just realized I cut this panel upside down. It's okay. Go for it. I knew I'd do something dumb when somebody was watching me. His nose is at the top, nose is at the bottom. I don't know if anybody will notice. I don't think it'll matter. First time I've ever done it. I knew it was bound to happen sometime, but of course it's when I decided to videotape a tutorial. Okay, so one more top pleat. Alright, so that panel is done. This one is done. Okay, so this is the one, this is our filter pocket. Switch this out. I want green to match. those filter pocket edges that we ironed over. Sew those flat. Okay, so we're done with this portion. Alright, so this back so you guys can see what I'm going to do. Alright, super simple. Just like when sewing seams, I'm going to flip the seam allowance. So on the back, I'm going to turn that seam allowance to my left. On this one, I'm going to pull that seam allowance to my right. Okay, so I've got my back of my mask and my filter pocket mask lined up just like it would be in the mask. Then I'm going to take my mask front, pull that seam allowance over to the left. My left might be your right on the video. And I'm going to pin that together. Then I'm going to line up these little nose edges. Okay, as fast as I can, as even as I can. Pin it. Same thing on the other side. Line up those little nose edges. Pin it. Flip my elastic in. Come on down here. And now I'm going to do the chin. So I line all 3 layers up. Pull it nice. Pin. Pin. Come out to the edge. Make sure all of this looks good. Lay that flat. Pin. Same thing over here. All this. Lay it flat. Pin it. Okay. Now we're ready to start sewing. I start sewing just on the inside of that bottom pleat and go all the way around and in just on the inside of the other bottom pleat, leaving me enough room to turn my mask. So here we go. About a 1/4 inch seam allowance is what I end up using. So here we go. Make sure you don't get your elastic loops on the edges. Make sure it's nice and in the center. Otherwise it'll catch in that seam. And then you have to go back and rip out. There it is, see it? It's right there. I'm going to shove it in. Bridge of that nose. Nice and slow, hopefully catching all 3 layers. If not, we just go back. Okay, back to the beginning. Just about lost my string. Okay, so I'm going to take out my pins and I'm going to inspect what I've done. Doesn't look like I've caught elastic in the inside. Make sure it looks like I caught all my edges. It looks good. We'll see what happens. When we flip, make sure it's all in there. Okay. Then what I do is I sewed this at 1/4 of an inch. Now I'm going to come back and I'm going to sew again at 1/4 of an inch. This makes the loops, the ear loops, about perfect size for what I like, and it also gives that extra reinforced stitching to make sure those ear loops don't pull back out through. That might be closer to 1/8 of an inch. It's not much. It's just a little. And if you guys are more comfortable making your ear loops a little longer, doing a little bigger stitch, I guess that's fine too, but it works for me. It's just seems to work really well to reinforce it. I was having problems once I started turning it and pulling on those ear loops, that the ear loops would just come out. So here we go. If you guys can see it, I don't know if you can, but I got one line of stitching here, and then right below it, another line of stitching, about 1/4 of an inch away. So I'm gonna go in and reach inside and pull out those pins. Slide this back so you guys can see one line of stitching, second line of stitching, reaching in, taking these pins out. I've been poked so many times by stray pins that I seem to have forgotten about. Okay. You certainly don't want to bleed over somebody's mask. Okay, so I'm going to turn this right side out. Grab my little turny tool, stick it into my chin, push those edges out. Do a little inspection of my edges as I go. Okay, so you guys, we're basically done. So we're going to pull this nice, roll that edge. So we got it right at the seam. Put a little pin in there. Same thing along these edges. Pull that out. Make it look nice, because we're going to top stitch along this, okay, and then I'm going to turn that chin in. I'm going to make sure that that little opening now is held down nice. Go across that. So basically just do 3 pins for this. We got all these stray strings we'll trim, but everything else looks nice. Looks like we caught the pocket everywhere. Back in. I always start up the side edge. Don't know why, but it seems to work best. Here we go. all there is to it. Super simple. Just working with what you have. Don't worry that that Batwing pattern doesn't fit inside. Just use what you got. I experimented the first time because when I was making the pleated panels, they were 6x9 and those fit perfectly. I didn't understand why. Why would the Batwing pattern have to be longer? So I just used the same length of elastic I was using for the pleated. And I don't think you can tell that I did it wrong. Here we go. How's it look? Thanks guys. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. This is my very first sewing tutorial, so enjoy.